It's just loading. Welcome to Good Vibes Solutions. My name is Olive Aleakwe and my guest is Penny Wangari-Jones. In this video, Penny will be discussing the work she does with the Racial Justice Network in West Yorkshire. We'll be discussing UK immigration policies, what's called deportation, racial inequality, and much more. Please like, share, comment below about your experiences and anything you can relate to in this video. Welcome, Penny.
Thanks, Olive.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you.
Okay, thank you so much for making time for this. And basically, please tell us about yourself and what you do.
So I work, like you said, for the Racial Justice Network, and we are based, it's a charity based in West Yorkshire, and we've been existing for a few years. And the network itself is about bringing individuals and organizations who have interest or working around race issues. And it's going all right. What we felt over the years is there is a great difficulty to talk about race, and some of the comments that we have said been around how when we bring race, we kind of all the other issues come up, and somehow race has slipped right to the bottom. And the core of our work is really having like race analysis and the intersection. So it's race analysis from an angle of sexuality, race analysis from an angle on gender, race analysis. And by that, we really like kind of highlighting the multiple barriers that people face, but multiple barriers that also mean we're here, you know, how the policies are made and kind of how they disadvantage lots of us. There's also a sense that part of the reason is how subtle racism and structures, kind of institutional racism works. So a lot of maybe individuals or organizations and maybe the state itself thinks that racism isn't there. We've heard time and time again people talk about we're living in a post-racial society, but we know it's there and it's real. And as subtle as it is that some people are angry obviously about what's happening, but also some people are kind of very like laid back that actually it's there and not aware, kind of ignorant to the fact they actually exist. So we've brought like organizations and individuals together. We do training. We've just finished a 6-month campaign course where we engaged at least about 50 individuals, 50 individuals. And a lot of them now are kind of, if we kind of call them the graduates, are all kind of doing amazing work locally and regionally, because we had people coming from as far as Scotland and Newcastle just for the course. We also do a lot of reports and research, and one of the ones that we launched way before it kind of some few months back before the Windrush scandal kind of got exposed was the hostile environment policy. And for that, it's kind of knowing what's going on in government, because also I think the flip side of this, most people aren't aware of things that are getting pushed through the government and the impact that they're likely to have. So we do research and reports. We also sit in decision-making tables, and by that is whether it's kind of, you know, a call out for people who represent the community to come in and kind of highlight issues that they're facing, but also positions of informing and influencing. We utilize the media as much as we can, and thank you, Olive, for this, because this is another opportunity to utilize media to raise awareness about race inequality, but also to organize and mobilize. The Racial Justice did a video about just over a year ago, and we called it 5 Ways to Disrupt Racism. It was perhaps my response, my hurt, because I was hurt by we do a lot of training, which I've just kind of mentioned, and a lot of the groups I was going to are talking about how bad it is out there. And my next question was, what are you doing about it? And most people are saying, no, it's nothing. It's what happens when you're a foreigner. And for me, I was like really disappointed that people have normalized those kind of attacks. But then on the flip side, I was also in circles where we say we don't know what to do. Maybe these issues are not as bad and as extreme as they are. So I did a video called 5 Ways to Disrupt Racism with help from an organization in London. And Video Rev, and as recently as found out, it's had over 35 million views. And I think the big part of that is been because there's almost a thirst for this kind of knowledge, but also a thirst for what do we do. So it's kind of simple 5 steps on what you could do. So we utilize the media, but we also organize and mobilize communities. So recently with Yowswood offering solidarity with detention, we've organized events just to highlight hostile environment policy. We brought in organizations because we work with a lot of organizations to campaign on specific stuff, and it's kind of, yeah, so those are the kind of the main strands of how we work, and it's working, but we could do a lot more. So yeah, we could do a lot more.
That sounds like such a wide and multifaceted remit. So we're going to break it down for those of the people who, and put some context for those who aren't aware of the different issues and definitions of what you're talking about. So to bring it back, I mean, you've already covered the who you support, racial justice network, who you reach. Now, let's take it back in terms of immigration policy and the Windrush scandal. Now, you and I know this is not new. What's it called? Kind of, we actually met talking, I'm sure, about 3 or 4 years ago, and you kindly came onto the broadcast I was working with at the time, and to talk about what's called the work that you do, deportation and Yowswood and other kind of centers. So, first of all, current context. What has been happening for maybe 8 years and before that? Windrush was around early 60s when African Caribbean people were welcomed and invited by the United Kingdom government to help build all infrastructure, all aspects of life, to work as British citizens, take on that status and help build post-World War II. Now, different things, families have been torn apart. So about that, I would like, Penny, for you to expand on that, how it ties into maybe people affected that you have come into contact with, immigration policies, Theresa May, Home Office, Amber Rudd, over to you.
Yeah, I think, well, actually, just last night, I was at Leeds University doing a talk around Black British resistance, and it was around what's been happening. And my first point, I started off by saying that because the focus, and we see this time and time again around Black History Month, we focus on America, we focus on heroes and sheroes in America, but also the fact that, you know, there's deaths and people dying in the streets, to the point that people think it's not happening here. So for me, the big part of, like we say, Windrush, people are invited here, they've come here not as immigrants, they've come here to help rebuild, or the families and whoever settled. And then forward on several decades later, people are stripped like as if they're nothing. And for me, there is an element, I can never remember who said it, about who they come for first, because when we look at, for example, the hostile environment policy, and this is what I was saying last night as well, it is apartheid. It is like a complete segregation of one rule for one lot of people and another rule for everybody else. So the hostile environment policy, for example, charges people who are for the NHS services. You know, you can no longer open a bank account. You cannot get, you cannot work regardless of what skills you have. You're not allowed to work. So, and this has almost become part of how people view themselves, and people who people who've migrated into the country. And now on top of that, as if you've not finished dehumanizing and degrading a specific group of people, including deporting and detaining them, regardless of the experiences they've had and why they're actually in this country in the first place. Now we've moved on to the next lot, and the next lot is, because they start from right at the bottom, the next lot is people who've migrated and been here, who haven't bothered to get passports for one reason or another. And we were saying the other day, not everybody travels, not everybody, goes on holidays and all of that. So not everybody has use of passports. So then we've moved now to a group of people who haven't got their residency, and now suddenly they're stripped of this thing called citizenship. They're stripped of this thing saying about them entitlement of being here. And for me, it's like shocking. It's 21st century. We talk about, segregation as if it's something over there that happened in South Africa, that happened in, in the 60s in America, but it's happening here and right now. And I think just that basis, on that basis itself, people really need to wake up and think, because we're almost also excusing, because the first, I'm glad that there's outrage, and outrage has gone as far, and Amber Rhodes obviously ended up, packing a job in. But I've said again, she was a foster mom for Theresa May's baby, because she didn't create this. This thing was created by Theresa May when she was Home Secretary. So all she's been doing is holding and executing it. And for that reason, she's had to, take the fall. The real reason and the policies that are creating this really hostile environment are still there, because, and it's the same goes with hate crime and hate incidents, because I still think we go and prosecute a couple of people who've said the N-word, who've told you to go back, and we get the police involved. But what is the source of this hatred? What is the source of this fear? The source of it is obviously the fact imperialism, colonialism, slavery, all of us baggages that have come and attached to the psyche of one person thinking they're more superior than another, and then the other person getting damaged in terms of thinking, I'm here, I can't say anything, and living in fear, to also the policies that are created that exclude one group of a community and include another group of community. That is the source of the problem that we have. So we can put in as many police officers in the streets who are also not very equipped, as we saw with a friend of mine who got attacked on a train from Leeds to Bradford, and nearly 4 days later, police still hadn't been to see her. And it wasn't until the Racial Justice Network pushed the story out that we had notoriety and kind of media coverage on it, and also the police getting involved. So even the police officers who are coming in to deal with these issues, they're not well equipped, and they don't have enough knowledge and expertise to understand what it is to have and experience racism. But that is almost a symptom. It's not the problem. The problem is coming from right above. It's capitalism. It's the policies that are created, and neoliberalism as well. And that is quite disenfranchising, because you just think, what is the point of doing what we're doing? Because all we're doing is almost sticking a plaster. We're not getting to the source of the problem. But in terms of going back to the Windrush scandal, the Windrush, I think now it's really highlighted for people how insidious and also how horrible the government can be if we let things be. Because if it wasn't exposed in the manner that it has been exposed, these things and the hostile environment policy, which, I mean, we will have, women and children in the streets coming up soon, because now the destitution doesn't just attach itself to asylum seekers. It is to single people, is being attached to women and children or families as well. So for me, it's kind of really I've seen it as an opportunity to really highlight how bad things can be, or also they're played from such a distance. But it's also been a good sense of solidarity, because we've seen solidarity from EU citizens, we've seen solidarity from obviously the British community, but we've seen solidarity within asylum community or refugee community. So it's been like a really good chance of groups who care about fairness and justice coming together and saying, this is out of order.
Perfect. It's great to have that insight. It's sad when we know it's not new. It's that the scope. It's sad that it's surprising. This has been a kind of, as you know, systematic. And I think it was Gary Young in The Guardian who summed it up quite correctly. It's been cruelty by design. And it's a very sad thing. And there's that. So I thank you for that. And hopefully, as you say, people will continue to support the work the Racial Justice Network does, because, we are all connected. And I do agree with you that I do believe if we African, Caribbean, people of the diaspora, so-called BAME communities, Southeast Asian, Far East Asian, anyone else, if we were not here, irrespective of whether we were birthright, born here, immigrants, emigres, asylum seekers, refugees, all vulnerable people, and contributing, others would be attacked. They turned that because of the austerity measures that you talked about. Because I remember, allegedly, the people who are tasked with running deportation centers, the security personnel to escort these people, all that money surely could be diverted to tackle the root causes and support frontline organizations like yourself, people who are in need. So moving on to social justice.
Yeah.
And you've covered some of it, and some people won't know some of these terminologies and stuff, including myself. There's social justice warrior. Are you one of those? And how would you define social justice?
I define social justice as just fairness and justice. And I think because, again, the language of when we talk race justice, it's as if we don't talk about all the other components that come with race justice. It's around opportunities for employment, opportunities for health or services, or fairness in provision of health services, housing, all of these things that we kind of count as a day-to-day basis. I worked in the homeless sector for years, in domestic violence, in mental health, with people in debt, substance misuse, all of those structures. And for me, what I kind of count as the key is I also saw, and I have experienced, and I had to support and do advocacy for people who are on the margins. And these are women who've had children taken off them, who are because they're drug addicts. But also, when you look and dig deeper, what is the source? So some majority of them had either been abused when they were younger, they've not gone to school, they were dyslexic, all of these things so the system has missed them out. They've kind of fallen off somewhere, and then they're stuck in this cycle of and unable to get out of it. So once you've been abused and it's not been addressed, then you start, whether you cover it up with alcohol, whether you cover you have mental health as a result, and then you end up as an addict. So you end up not, out of your home and all this. And for me, it's that I've seen people born and bred here who've been stuck in cycles, and it's not just one generation. Some people, I was working with 3 generations, so they're having children, but their mothers they didn't grow up with their own mothers, they've just reconnected, but they've also lost their own children. So it's kind of, and for me, it's recognizing that these people are out there. The language that we've had about scroungers and all of that, what is the reason? People were going into prisons, people were committing petty crimes to feed themselves or to do, again, what are they? What is the reason for doing that? They've been missed out. And the way society looks at them, and the way, especially kind of the 1%, which you kind of mentioned around guys running the prisons, there are jobs that people are getting, but who is actually benefiting from holding these people in these spaces of injustice? Few percent, G4S, one, Circle, who are the shareholders? So for me, social justice kind of extends to all the other factions around gender, around, homophobia, Islamophobia, and how people that fit in those identities feel excluded in society, but also feel like they're not they're looked down upon. So when you look at the voting, I know we're voting now, and I did do a fair share of voter registration drives. Most people who kind of now are angry because they're not heard, they're disconnected from the system and the decision-making tables, that it's kind of people right at the bottom. And that's what the point you made about they start off right at the bottom, and once they've cleared that, they come for you. And I think, I can't remember, there's Audre Lorde or somebody who said, if they come for me in the morning, they'll come for you in the evening, something like that. Because once they started with the guys who are most vulnerable, which is usually people who are seeking asylum, they would move up to the next ladder, which is perhaps people who've been here, and they can strip you of your citizenship, because that's where it's heading as well. But then once they've cleared that, they will get up to the next ladder. So if we sit back and we watch people right at the, right at the bottom have these things happen to them, chances are they get to us. So we're making way for them to get to us. And we really need to kind of do that whole solidarity thing. So for me, social justice is fairness and justice for all. But a big part of it is understanding equity. And equity is where you start off is not where I start off. And if you recognize, and it's kind of around, again, power and privilege, recognizing English is not my first language, which means I might have it a little bit difficult than somebody else. Or I am perhaps of certain, disability or whatever. So understanding those factors that mean we're not starting on the same path. We might be sitting here in the same position, but we're not starting. And what do you do to allow me to take a few steps before or ahead of you, just so we can keep, that understanding of equity. So social justice is a lot around that.
So Racial Justice Network, it's all this that you are doing and building power, forming alliances. What support do you and Racial Justice Network need? How can you build power? I do believe there is strength in numbers, but only if the mindset, you're unified in the mindset for the greater good of all, leaving your faction behind, your ideals, the same differences, fighting together. So how can people support you? How can they connect with you? And let us know what's happening.
So I'd say support, definitely financial support is one big aspect. And I think this is not just as a racial justice network. A lot of the organizations that are working around equality and equity are being stripped off. If it's funding from the government, that's been cut down anyway, but it's also very, very difficult to achieve and even understand how to get funding from other organizations, whether it's grant givers. So which means sometimes you get grants for a very short period, and just as soon as you kind of get going, they're gone, and then you don't have. So we overstretched. So first of all, we're struggling financially. Most organizations do. When you work in the charity sector, you're not there for money, you're there almost for driven by passion. But on the other flip side is also there's a huge need for the work, there's a huge need for the connections with the communities. So sometimes it's human power that is lacking. If we can't get it financially, just people supporting and being able to either organize, help, offer venues, offer even little things like refreshments, like things like that could go a long way, because it still falls back on the little that we have to kind of get those things going. But turning up, and what, again, it feels like I'm in a conversation we were having yesterday. What we were saying is activism in terms of, or rising and kind of not just sitting back and watching things happen, doesn't have to be getting your banner and going out in the street and shouting. It's also the very subtle forms like what you're doing, Olive, where you can utilize. If you're doing media, you can give opportunities for people to come and highlight stuff in the media. If you're a writer, you can either write about it. If you're a teacher, you can push for some of these to be put in the curriculum, but also you can have these people, you can invite people like us to come in and give the other angle that is not missed out in in the British curriculum. This is the same goes for universities. This goes for, so whatever sector and angle and place you're working at, there is something you can do for race equality, racial justice, and also social justice. And that's, for me, the bigger messaging, because what I was saying as well was people assume it's big heroic people that can do and change things. Actually, each one of us can do something, and that's kind of where the tap on would be. If you can't offer this, there's always something you can offer. But also for me, going back a little bit in terms of how dehumanizing things have been, I think part of the minimizing and just kind of making issues look not that big is how they've managed to get things going. So when we talk about, for example, illegal, and you've heard even within like senior MPs and senior officers, they still talk about illegal immigrants. When you kind of put that word already, you've already negated whatever else you're going to say after that, because the compassion is gone, and that's how they've managed to push and change all of these things. So also for me, it's for people to also allow themselves to get uncomfortable, because the reason why we've stuck at this is because I think race conversations, like I said when I started, has been drowned out completely, because it's uncomfortable for people to listen, it's uncomfortable to talk about. But what I'd ask is people to allow themselves to get a little uncomfortable, because we need to develop that muscle where we talk about white fragility a lot. And that is when people are not able to take it, and you get the denials, you get the dismissals and all of that stuff. So by doing that, we can cut out of the microaggressions, which is something that we've spoken about, where people say and do things out of ignorance. Oh, where are you from? Where are you really from? And kind of those kind of languages is really acknowledging, because once you check yourself, you're likely to do less of it. You're less likely to think you want to go to a community and save the community, because actually the power and the answers are in the community. And if you just listen, the answers will be there. What you need to do is support what they say to you rather than come up with your own solutions. Because we've had maybe decades of that as well, where people are coming in with a solution without necessarily talking to the community. And they sat there speaking on behalf of the community. And that's what people need to do doing less of, because if you have a good understanding of the background of all of this kind of race analysis and race issues, then you're less likely to do that. But you're more likely to also use that privilege that you have, because I say I didn't choose to be born the way I am, where I was, and I know nobody else did. So let's just get that clear. But by the nature of your skin color, or where you're born, or where you studied, and or the gender that you have got certain privileges that some communities and people don't have. So for me, it's not, let's not discuss that so much. Let's think, what can you do with what you've got already?
Exactly. And there is money out there to support. Please do get and connect with Penny Wangari-Jones, organisation that she works with in West Yorkshire, but with a national remit called Racial Justice Network. All their connections and links will be posted below the video. Please comment, share your experiences, get in touch, like, share, and on all your social media platforms. Penny, thank you so much for your time.
Yeah.
And anything at all, do share with your events. There's great things being done. And Penny's going to let us know about what's coming up. And then I'll add everything under the videos. Penny, what's coming up?
So we've got Catherine Cleaver coming to Manchester in June. She's a Black Panther. She was one of the Black Panther back in the days, and she still is kind of advocating for race issues. So she's coming. We organise this with the Northern Police Monitoring Group in Manchester, which are also kind of looking at fighting police brutality, but also the injustices that kind of go around that. So she's coming in, and we'd love for more of us to turn up and listen. And like you said, I think you've linked people. If people want to get involved and want to get in touch and support the work that we do, our Twitter handle is @racejustice, and the website is www.racialjusticenetwork.co.uk. And I'm sure one of us will get back and we can continue this stuff. We've been really, really lucky in terms of alliances locally with groups with who we've co-organized events, and I am equally grateful for that, because not everybody is able to just get up and do stuff, but we want more, and it'd be good to have more and more of us. And thank you so much for this opportunity, Olive.
Welcome. And special thanks. Thank you for your insights, time, and solution focus for all of these issues, put very simply. Peace. Thank you so much for your time. Thanks for watching. As you say, please share. Your comments are welcome. Move forward together. All the best.